Hello YouTube! So in this video I want to take a look at the idea that there might be theories that are true and for which we can propose sound arguments for the truth of these theories, but that nevertheless these theories cannot be believed. The truth may well be beyond belief. An interesting discussion of this is given in Bart Streumer's book Unbelievable Errors, and I'll be drawing on that in this video. Well, before we begin, a quick advert. You can support my channel on Patreon or PayPal. I offer private tutoring. Send me an email if you're interested. Or if you want to talk about these things, join the Discord. There will be a link for that in the description. Okay, so Streumer, as I said, he argues in this book, Unbelievable Errors, that there may be theories that are true but that cannot be believed. And in particular, he focuses on normative error theory. So basically, he argues in favour of error theory about normativity, and then he argues that this theory can't be believed. So according to normative error theory, first, normative judgments are beliefs that ascribe normative properties, but second, there are no normative properties, so all normative judgments are false. In particular, Streumer focuses on moral normativity and epistemic normativity. So moral normativity concerns reasons for action. You know, we say things like, the fact that slavery causes suffering is a reason not to own slaves, or you ought to give to charity. Epistemic normativity concerns reasons for belief. So we say things like, the observation of smoke above the forest is a reason to believe that the forest is on fire, or you ought to believe that human beings evolved by natural selection. In general, normative judgments are judgments about what to do or what to believe. I have another video titled Normativity, Moral and Epistemic, which examines the relation between moral normativity and epistemic normativity in more detail, so you can check that out if you want to know more about this. But anyway, so it's, if you're interested in philosophy, you're probably already familiar with moral error theory. Moral error theory says that moral judgments are beliefs that ascribe moral properties, but there are no moral properties, so all moral judgments are false. That's a view which, fairly unpopular view, I think, but a fairly influential view. Lots of people know about that. Now, normative error theory generalizes this to all normative judgments, including epistemic judgments. So according to the normative error theory, there are no reasons for belief. There is nothing that you ought or ought not to believe, just in the same way that there are, for the moral error theorists, there are no reasons for action, nothing you ought or ought not to do. Nothing is, nothing is forbidden, obligatory, permissible, etc. So Streumer's book presents the case for normative error theory. I'm not going to examine that here. As I said, I've kind of discussed this in previous videos. What's interesting for the purposes of this video is that he also says that nobody can believe the normative error theory. So why is this? Well, first of all, we need to think about what belief is supposed to be. And Streumer specifies two conditions for belief. Condition B1 says that a person believes that P only if this person is very confident that P. Condition B2 says a person believes that P only if this person adequately understands P. So I think these are probably fairly straightforward. So first, to believe a proposition involves having a high confidence that the proposition is true. Of course, we hold beliefs with different degrees of confidence. I might be more confident that the sun will rise tomorrow than I am that human beings evolved by natural selection, but in both cases I might still be very confident. I might be very surprised if either of these turned out to be false. So, that's condition B1, right? Like, belief requires at least a pretty significant degree of confidence. It's when you believe something, it's not like you just, you're not just guessing, right? Okay, and then second, I believe a proposition only if I adequately understand it. This one might be a bit more controversial, so think about something like quantum field theory. Well, very few people have an understanding of quantum field theory, but they probably will still take it that the theory is true. So, do you have to understand something in order to believe it? Well, I think what's going on in this case is that people are deferring to expert opinion. So physicists tell us that quantum field theory is true, and physicists are the relevant experts, so we trust their judgments. Unless I have The point is that unless I have studied quantum field theory myself, I'm not actually going to hold the theory in my mind. So that theory is not the content of any of my beliefs. The content of my belief is more like this. The content of my belief is the theory named quantum field theory, the theory that is studied by physicists, is true. Or maybe just like what these experts say is true, right? Like I'm just deferring to these experts. But I don't myself actually have the content of those theories as part of my beliefs. So in order to believe something, you have to be confident about it, and you have to adequately understand it. Now, Streumer says that B1 and B2 entail two further conditions. So we have condition B3. A person believes that P only if this person believes what she believes to be entailed by P. For instance, suppose that Verity claims to believe that Socrates was a man, and she claims to believe that being a man entails being a human being, but nevertheless, Socrates was not a human being. Well, that would be a somewhat strange statement, and I mean, how would we explain Verity's claim here? Well, we might say maybe she's not so confident in her beliefs. Maybe she's just like somewhat inclined to think that Socrates was a man. Or maybe she's just being insincere. Maybe she's actually just not expressing herself honestly. Or maybe she's confused. She's unclear what it is she's actually saying. But either way, she doesn't fully believe that Socrates was a man. Now, importantly, this condition B3, does not say that you need to believe what is actually entailed by P. Given our cognitive limitations, probably nobody believes all of the logical consequences of their beliefs. You only need to believe what you believe to be entailed by P. So, you believe that. So, let's take some proposition, and proposition P. You believe that P entails Q. Well, you're going to believe that P only if you also believe that Q, regardless of whether or not P actually entails the Q. Okay, so then we have condition B4. A person believes the P only if this person does not believe that there is no reason to believe that P. Okay, so so when we say reason for belief here, all this means is that there is some consideration that the person in question takes as supporting or counting in favour of the belief that P. So Streumer says he's not assuming any particular analysis of what reasons are, except that reasons are normative. They're not merely causal. So when I see smoke above the forest, I come to believe that the forest is on fire. I take it that smoke above the forest is a reason to believe that the forest is on fire. And this isn't a mere causal relation. It's not merely that I see the smoke and then I am caused to believe that the forest is on fire. That would be analogous to being hit on the head and then forming the belief that the forest is on fire as a result. No, the idea is that there are some considerations that are sort of privileged in some sense, right? So if you take two people and you have one person who sees smoke above the forest and then they realize that this supports the belief that the forest is on fire, and then they form the belief the forest is on fire. On the other hand, you've got another person who's just like hit on the head, and then they form the belief the forest is on fire. Well, in the first case, things are going right. In the first case, this person is responsive to reasons. So reasons are normative. They're not merely causal connections. And smoke above the forest, that's something which supports or counts in favour of believing the forest is on fire. Beyond that, Streumer says he's not assuming any particular analysis of what reasons for belief are. So suppose that Sydney says, well, I believe the forest is on fire, but I believe that there is no reason to believe this. Well, this would be kind of paradoxical. We might think that Sydney can't really be very confident that the forest is on fire because, he's explicitly saying there's no reason to favour that belief over any other belief. There's no reason to think that that belief is more likely to be true. And that's just to say he's not very confident about it. So there's no reason to think that the claim the forest is on fire is more likely to be true than any other claim, and that seems to violate B1, the condition that in order to believe that P, you have to be very confident that P. I mean, maybe consider what might make somebody deny that there is a reason to believe the forest is on fire. So suppose, okay, so Sydney sees smoke above the forest, but then he says there's no reason to believe the forest is on fire. Well, why might he say this? Well, maybe he's just read some reports that there's a concert taking place in the forest which uses pyrotechnics, and he knows that pyrotechnics produce a great deal of smoke. So in that case, I mean, he's now going to say, well, this observation of smoke provides no reason to believe the forest is on fire. And he's going to be unable to form the belief that the forest is on fire on the basis of that observation. So it's only when we take, an observation as a reason for belief that we form beliefs on the basis of the observation. You believe that P only if you do not believe that there is no reason to believe that P. You have to believe, or at least, you can't believe that there's no reason to believe it. You may not know what the reason is, but if you explicitly believe that there is no reason for believing in P, this undermines your belief in P, according to Streumer. Okay, so with all of this said, we can now consider why it is that the error theory is beyond belief, why it cannot be believed. So recall that according to the error theory, all normative judgments are false, because there are no normative properties. But judgments about reasons for belief are normative judgments, and reasons for belief are normative properties. So according to the error theory, all judgments about reasons for belief are false. There are no reasons for belief. And it follows a fortiori that there is no reason to believe the error theory. Anybody who adequately understands the error theory will know that error theory entails this. So if you understand the error theory, you will know that it entails that there is no reason to believe the error theory. Remember that per condition B2, in order to believe the error theory, you have to understand the error theory. So in order to believe the error theory, you have to understand that the error theory entails there's no reason to believe the error theory. So, per condition B3, if you believe the error theory, you believe that there is no reason to believe the error theory. But this violates condition B4, because per condition B4, if you believe there is no reason to believe the error theory, then you do not believe the error theory. So basically, error theory is unbelievable because, according to the error theory, there is no reason to believe the error theory, but as soon as you believe that there is no reason to believe the error theory, you can't believe the error theory. You can't simultaneously believe a proposition while believing that there is no reason to believe it. So that is why nobody can believe the error theory. Okay, so this is Streumer's argument. Now, we might suppose that it is a problem for a theory if we can't believe it. But Streumer argues actually this is not so. And this is an important result. I mean, we've focused on normative error theory here, but there are plenty of other philosophical positions which it's sometimes argued cannot be believed. For example, eliminative materialism claims that folk psychology is a radically mistaken theory, and in particular that there are no beliefs. Arguably, nobody can believe eliminative materialism. To believe eliminative materialism, I would have to believe that there are no beliefs. If I understand the theory, I know this, but then it seems kind of incoherent to believe that, right? So, there might be an argument that eliminative materialism is unbelievable, that it's impossible for a person to believe it. There are many other theories where we can make the claim that they are that they're perhaps impossible to believe. And so it's worth considering, is this a problem? If a theory is impossible to believe, is that a problem? Well, Streumer says it isn't. So first of all, suppose that it just so happens that we do not believe a theory. Well, that's obviously no problem. That's no objection, right? For pretty much any theory, I can find people who do not believe it. And so what? That has no bearing on the truth of a theory. Indeed, before I accept a theory, when I'm deliberating about whether or not to believe the theory, I do not believe the theory. So, okay, it's not a problem when we do not believe a theory. And then, so why would it be a problem if we can't believe it? The fact that we can't believe a theory, that doesn't in itself show that the theory is false. It doesn't in itself show that the arguments for it are unsound. Of course, if we can't believe a theory, then we can't sincerely assert that the theory is true. But, again, so what? That doesn't show that the theory is false. The truth may well outstrip what we are capable of believing and what we are capable of sincerely asserting. So there's no obvious connection between, like unbelievability and falsehood, at least. It seems in principle like it could be the case that there's a theory that is impossible to believe, but that is nevertheless true. So might there be some other problem here? Well, a general worry that Streumer points out is that if a theory is unbelievable, then any attempt to defend the theory will lead a person to state propositions that are Moorean paradoxes. So the classic case of a Moorean paradox is the following proposition. It is raining, but I do not believe that it is raining. Okay, so clearly this statement might be true. It's possible for it to be true that it's raining while I do not believe that it is raining. Indeed, this state of affairs has probably occurred many times in the past. I'm not always paying attention to the weather, right? So I'm not always aware of when it's raining. But at the same time, there's something absurd about this statement, and it seems like you can't sincerely assert it, because I will sincerely assert the first conjunct, it is raining. I'll sincerely assert that only if I actually believe that it is raining. But my belief that it is raining is just what is denied by the second conjunct. I can't simultaneously believe that it's raining and believe that I do not believe that it's raining. There's something very weird about that anyway. So if Streumer is right, it looks like the defender of error theory is also forced to make these sort of Moorean paradoxical claims. She's forced to say things like, error theory is true, but I do not believe that error theory is true. Okay, so what might the defender of error theory say about this? Well, so the first thing to notice, of course, is Moorean propositions are puzzling, but they need not be false. Indeed, we should expect that there are plenty of true Moorean propositions. The problem with Moorean propositions is that they cannot be sincerely asserted. But notice that the error theorist does not claim to assert the proposition EM. That she doesn't claim to assert error theory is true, but I do not believe that error theory is true. So, since the error theory cannot be believed, the error theorist never sincerely asserts the first conjunct. She never sincerely asserts that the error theory is true. She'll just say she doesn't believe that error theory is true. She doesn't believe it because she can't believe it. Or at least that's what Streumer would say. Any error theorist who follows Streumer would say. So, of course, this raises the question, well, how can somebody defend a theory without asserting it? In some sense, it's like, okay, you can't really be an error theorist. You can defend the error theory, so how can you do that? Well, one thing the error theorist, or maybe I should say, again, more precisely, the defender of error theory might do, is assert different parts of the theory at different times. So recall we have these two components of error theory. There's the claim that normative judgments are beliefs that ascribe normative properties, but second, there are no normative properties. And so what's happening is that belief in the first claim is blocking belief in the second claim, and then vice versa. So Streumer says that when he considers claim A, that normative judgments are beliefs that ascribe normative properties, he finds himself implicitly believing that there are normative properties, in contrast to claim B. Claim B being there are no normative properties. And when considering claim B, Streumer finds himself believing that normative judgments are, non-cognitive attitudes, or something like that. That they're not beliefs that ascribe normative properties, in contrast to claim A. So you sometimes assert one part of the theory, you sometimes assert the other part, but you never assert the conjunction of the two parts. An alternative option for the error theorist is to assert sound arguments for the error theory, arguments whose premises are true and that are logically valid. We can say that these arguments point in the direction of error theory, but we never actually assert the conclusion. So the most that we say is, well, the arguments seem to show that the error theory is true, but these arguments never actually induce belief in the error theory being true. They just they seem to kind of point in that direction. And we can assert them, right? Like we can assert all of the, or at least we can assert all of the premises of these arguments without asserting the conclusions. So you assert the premises, you assert that the arguments are logically valid, but then you just don't draw the conclusions. Finally, the defender of error theory can insincerely assert it. She can insincerely give sound arguments for it. So she can pretend to be an error theorist. Streumer, as Streumer says, summarizing his attitude, I quote, I have so far defended the error theory without asserting that this theory is true, and if I have made assertions that entailed or presupposed that this theory is true, I was, to this extent, insincere. That would not show that my arguments are unsound or that the error theory is false. Instead, it would merely show that I have insincerely put forward sound arguments and have insincerely told you the truth. You can insincerely tell the truth. And so these are some ways then in which you can defend a theory without believing or asserting that the theory is true, and so without ending up with these like Moorean paradoxical propositions. Okay then, so a further objection to the idea of unbelievable theories, to the claim that that unbelievable theories might be true at least, concerns the aim of philosophy. So there are many philosophers who hold that the methodology of philosophy involves some sort of reflective equilibrium. Reflective equilibrium aims for a kind of coherence of one's beliefs. The idea is that when we're engaging in philosophical inquiry, there are three relevant considerations. There are three things we're thinking about when trying to build our theories. So first, we have intuitions about specific cases. Second, there are general principles governing intuitions. And finally, there are theoretical virtues. Okay, this is very abstract, so let's consider a specific case. Suppose we're debating morality. We're asking the question, what is the right thing to do? How do we figure out what is the right thing to do? Well, the idea is, we might proceed like this. So first of all, we might consider various moral intuitions. We just start out with various moral intuitions. We come to the inquiry with a bunch of different assumptions that are just like pre-theoretical. So enslaving people is bad, giving to charity is good, pulling the lever in the trolley case is permissible, pushing a person in front of the trolley is impermissible, and so on. So these are just the immediate intuitive judgments we have to specific cases. Then next, we can propose principles, moral principles, that are, that sort of govern these intuitions or that are designed to accommodate these intuitions. So think of utilitarianism. This is the principle that the right action is whatever produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Okay, then we test this principle against our moral intuitions. So, in the case of utilitarianism, we might say, well, look, this utilitarian principle entails that enslaving people is acceptable if the enslavement produces enough happiness for other people. Or it entails that we ought to push the man in front of the trolley to save the lives of the people tied to the tracks. But these are deeply counterintuitive consequences. We then have this. We then face a choice, right? We can modify the principle, or we can reject the intuitions. So we can modify the principle so that it rules out enslaving people, even when the enslavement produces enough happiness for other people, or we can reject the intuition. We can say, well, actually, yeah, if slavery it did produce enough happiness, then it would be fine. We're sort of weighing kind of intuitions against principles. We sometimes modify the principles, we sometimes reject the intuitions, and we're kind of looking for the moral principle that accommodates the broadest range of intuitions. But obviously no moral principle accommodates all of them. Now, at the same time as we're doing this, while we're working through these steps, we're also weighing the intuitions and principles against theoretical virtues. So in general, we want theories that are simple, that have explanatory power, that are not ad hoc, that do not make arbitrary distinctions, and so on. So in general, then, moral principles, they don't need to be consistent with all of our intuitions. We may well decide that a theory accommodates enough of our intuitions and it scores well enough on the theoretical virtues that we should accept the counterintuitive implications. I mean, as I said, every moral theory has some counterintuitive implications. So basically what we're doing is, we're weighing intuitions, principles, theoretical virtues. We're weighing these, modifying each in order to achieve the most coherent web of belief. And this is a common view of how philosophical inquiry in general proceeds. So, we've seen this in the case of moral reasoning, but the idea is that this method is something we're going to apply to philosophy in general. Okay, so now suppose, though, that we cannot believe a theory. Well, in that case, the theory cannot bring our beliefs into reflective equilibrium. At best, we will just shuttle back and forth between believing different parts of the theory at different times. We're never going to settle into a stable belief state. So if the method of philosophy is some sort of reflective equilibrium, then this looks like it's going to be a problem for theories that are unbelievable. So what might we say about this? Well, I guess one question here is in what sense this tells against the theory. One way we might be inclined to put the reflective equilibrium objection would be to say that, so we might say, the fact that a theory cannot bring our beliefs into reflective equilibrium shows that we ought not to believe the theory. But that can't, and that's what we might say sometimes, right? In some cases we might say that, but we shouldn't say that here because if the theory can't be believed, if a theory is unbelievable, then the question of whether we should or shouldn't believe it doesn't even arise. So presumably the objection must instead be something like, the fact that a theory fails to bring our beliefs into reflective equilibrium shows that the theory is false. Now, it's not entirely obvious what the connection is between reflective equilibrium and truth or falsehood. It seems at least logically possible that a person could have a coherent set of beliefs that are nevertheless false. In fact, Streumer's response on this point is just that, well, for all we know, the truth might be beyond our grasp, and we shouldn't assume at the outset of inquiry that all of the relevant truths will be believable. Look, if our goal is to develop true theories, then we don't want to be believing false theories merely in order to achieve reflective equilibrium. I guess the assumption here is that philosophers aim to develop true theories, and methodologies like reflective equilibrium, maybe they are a means to achieving that, but actually if the truth is unbelievable, that method will lead us astray. And, in the case of unbelievable truths, reflective equilibrium isn't going to help us, and we shouldn't be defending false theories just to get reflective equilibrium, because the goal is truth, really. Of course, on the other hand, we might ask what other method we're supposed to use, if not reflective equilibrium. I mean, how else are we supposed to proceed in philosophy, if not by attempting to bring intuitions, principles, and theoretical virtues into a maximally coherent web? Streumer doesn't suggest anything here. It's fine to say that the aim of philosophy is truth, but then what method are we using to get at the truth? We need an answer to that before we can assess whether unbelievability is a problem. Another way that we might deal with the reflective equilibrium objection is to argue that actually the unbelievable theory can achieve the relevant kind of reflective equilibrium. So yes, we can't believe the theory. So the theory can't form part of the most coherent system of beliefs. But it may be that the theory is part of the most coherent system of propositions, a system of propositions that is, logically consistent, explanatory, supported by many sound arguments, accommodates the widest range of intuitions, whatever. So it might be that the method of reflective equilibrium points in the direction of the unbelievable theory. When we consider, the arguments for and against different views concerning normativity, when we bear in mind, like, our epistemological commitments, theoretical virtues, all of this, we might think that the normative error theory actually scores best on these counts, that normative error theory is part of the most coherent set of propositions. So just as we shouldn't assume from the outset that the true theory will be believable, so we shouldn't assume that the theory that is supported by the method of reflective equilibrium will be believable. I guess the point here is, look, we can distinguish between the method of reflective equilibrium and the product of reflective equilibrium. The method of reflective equilibrium directs us to weigh intuitions against principles, against theoretical virtues, until we find the most coherent system. The product of reflective equilibrium is the set of propositions that results when we apply this method. So by applying the method of reflective equilibrium, we might be led to a system that we cannot believe. We might develop some system of propositions that cannot be believed. And we can recognize that a theory, sort of accommodates intuitions and scores well on the theoretical virtues, like simplicity, even if the theory cannot be believed. Okay, so that maybe deals with the reflective equilibrium objection. Interestingly, Streumer actually suggests that there might be a sense in which the fact that a theory is unbelievable could strengthen the theory. And this can happen because the unbelievability of a theory can provide a debunking explanation of intuitions that seem to tell against the theory. So, to sort of set this up, take again the normative error theory. Well, error theory entails a whole bunch of very counterintuitive judgments. So it's going to entail that, for instance, it is not the case that torturing children is wrong. There is no reason to proportion your beliefs to the evidence. It is not the case that you ought to believe modern evolutionary theory, etc. Now, claims like these are deeply counterintuitive, or so the argument goes. I mean, the claim that torturing children is wrong, that's surely much more plausible than any philosophical premise that could be used in an argument for error theory. So there's a conflict between error theory and a large set of highly intuitive, commonsensical judgments like torturing children is wrong. Now, faced with this situation, the objector will say that we should favour the intuitive judgments and reject the error theory. Because, I mean, like these judgments like torturing children is wrong, those judgments are far more plausible than any philosophical premise you could use in an argument for the error theory. So you should favour the intuitions over whatever arguments are being proposed for the error theory. And I mean, this is, again, this is a sort of standard philosophical move. Similarly, consider like eliminativism about folk psychology. Well, this entails that our everyday judgments about other people's mental states are uniformly false. Nobody has any beliefs, desires, hopes, or fears. Nobody ever intends to do anything. Nobody experiences emotions, etc. These are deeply counterintuitive claims. So again, there's a conflict between eliminative materialism and our common sense judgments about other people. And the argument is, look, we should favour the intuitive judgments and reject eliminative materialism. The proposition that some people have beliefs, that's far more plausible than any philosophical premise we might use in an argument to the contrary. So in general then, philosophers often accept a principle along these lines. If claim C and philosophical theory T cannot both be true, and C is much more plausible than T, then we should reject T. We might want to modify this so that it concerns a large set of claims rather than a single claim. I mean, maybe it's not really a problem if a philosophical theory has, some counterintuitive implications. The charge against error theory is that it has just like way too many extremely counterintuitive implications. That's the charge. But now suppose that nobody can believe error theory. Well, in that case, we have a ready explanation for why C seems more plausible than T. It's not that C is actually true, but rather that T cannot be believed. Of course we find various normative judgments more plausible than error theory about normativity. That's because we can't believe error theory, because we can't help but make normative judgments. Normativity is psychologically irresistible. if we accept this, then we have an explanation for the intuitive force of our, normative judgments. We have an explanation for why it is that there's this large set of highly intuitive propositions that are incompatible with the error theory. And this explanation has nothing to do with whether error theory is true, with whether those intuitions are true. So in this way, the impossibility of believing the theory can strengthen the theory by providing a debunking explanation of the intuitions that seem to tell against the theory. So compare this to, for instance, like suppose I'm observing a wall that visually appears to be red, and on the basis of this visual perception, I come to believe that the wall is red. But then I discover that the wall is illuminated by red lights. Well, in that case, I know that the wall would appear red to me even if it were actually white. And so I can no longer take the visual appearance of the wall as indicating its true colour. What's explaining the visual appearance of the wall is the unusual lighting conditions, not just the colour of the wall. So the unusual lighting conditions provide a debunking explanation of the visual appearance. I mean, look, maybe in this case, maybe the wall actually is red, but I mean, so on the basis of the visual appearance, I have no reason to believe that anymore. I can no longer trust my visual appearances. The wall would appear red, even if it was some other color. So, similarly, then consider normative intuitions. We have this intuition that torturing children is wrong. On this basis, we form the belief that torturing children is wrong. And given the strength of the intuition that torturing children is wrong, we might be inclined to say this intuition is more plausible, more believable than any philosophical theory incompatible with it. But Streumer's argument is that, well, normative error theory is impossible to believe. And so this explains why normative judgments seem more believable, why they strike us more forcefully than the error theory. I mean, I would find my normative judgments more compelling even if the error theory were actually true. So this should, undermine my trust in my normative judgments. That's the end of that video. I hope you found that interesting, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.